Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica and today I'm going to show you how to make a really easy tote bag, but we're going to add a little bit of a twist today. We're going to be using this fun, fuzzy Sherpa fabric. So this tote bag is so fun, and you don't have to use the Sherpa. You can use any fabric that you like. You could even make a quilted outer panel if you want. The instructions include the size for the entire outer panel, so just have fun with it. But I thought it would be really fun to do a cozy Sherpa bag, and actually they have pink Sherpa as well, so I am going to make a second one for sure. The inside is lined, and then can you see I added a fun little pocket in there, and then I used the Cocoa Knits handle kit. This one is really great because these handles are actually removable, so you can take them off, you can wash your bag, and then just put them back on. So I love using these handles. This bag finishes at about 17 inches wide by about 12 and a half inches high, and then it's about 5 inches deep this way. You can change that based on how large of a boxed bottom you do, so you can alter yours for whatever you like. This bag is super basic and beginner friendly, even using the Sherpa fabric. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's what you're gonna need to make today's project. So supplies for this project are pretty easy, and you don't have to use this Sherpa fleece. I just thought it would be really fun and different. You could use just regular fabric. I also have some lining fabric. I have some pocket fabric because I thought it'd be fun to put a little pocket in here. And then you're also going to need some interfacing and also some sort of handles. I'm using these Cocoa Knits leather handle kits. I've really been loving these. They're really easy to use and they're really pretty. These are 16-inch straps, so you can make them any length you want, but I do like this length. And then I am using this midway interfacing. You can use any level of interfacing you want. I want it to have a little bit of structure, but not like be super rigid. So you can use whatever you like, but this is the one that I've chosen. It's also helpful to have some of these wonder clips, your rotary trimmer, and a ruler. All the exact cutting instructions are going to be in the PDF pattern, so I'll make sure to link that below. And really the rule of thumb with bags is you can make it any size you want. As long as your outside and your lining pieces are the same size, you're pretty much good to go. So we're going to start off by assembling our pocket because that's going to be the piece that we need first, and then we'll work on our lining, and then we'll work on this outer piece. So I've already attached my interfacing to the wrong side of my lining fabric, and I just have fusible, so you'll just follow the instructions on the panel. I used my Laura Star iron and just pressed this really quickly. The Laura Star steam really fuses these on really easily and quickly, so it only took like a couple seconds to fuse this entire piece. I also took my pocket piece, and you've got a small piece of fusible for that as well, and so I went ahead and adhered that as well. And to know where to put that, I just folded my pocket right sides together like this and just made a crease right there. And then I just put that interfacing right up along that crease, and then you should have about 1/4 inch around the outside edge of fabric right here. And that's just going to make it a little bit easier when we sew it together and turn our pocket right side out. So the first thing we're going to do is take our pocket. We're going to fold it in half along the longer side, just like this. We're going to sew around all of these 3 raw edges, and I'm just going to leave an opening down here about 1.5 to 2 inches wide so that we can turn our pocket right side out when we're done. And I am just sewing this using 1/4 inch seam allowance. So here is our pocket, and I don't know if you can tell right here, but this edge is actually my selvage edge, and I love using my leftover fabric remnants for pockets because no one will ever notice that that is in there once we flip this pocket right side out, and then I was able to have enough fabric to use this leftover piece in my stash. You could even make this pocket 2 different colors if you didn't have a piece that was large enough. So I love just using up my stash for these little projects. One other thing I like using for these is my point turner. This is by Modern American Vintage, and I love this because the point is sharp enough to poke out corners in pockets like this, but it's not so sharp that it pokes through your fabric, because I know a lot of times those ones that are really sharp can actually poke a hole through your fabric, and no one likes that. Okay, so our next step, and I'm just going to fold in this open edge, just repress it a little bit with that 1/4 inch seam. And we're going to close that opening up when we attach this pocket to our lining. So I'm not going to hand sew it or anything like that. I'm just going to press it really good. I'm using my Laura Star. Hopefully you can see and hear that steam. Now you can see it. And the rule is you steam forward and then don't steam when you pull it back. Steam forward, don't steam back. So here's our pocket ready to go. I have my lining piece folded in half. And we're gonna box the bottom of this about 4 inches. So I just want to visually say, okay, 4 inches up, this is about what I'm working with for my pocket space. And then I'm going to lose about 1/2 inch or so along the top when I sew it to my bag. So I just try and center it and figure out where is gonna look best on here. This is 4 3/4. This is 5. So we'll just scoot it over just a little bit. And I am gonna grab some pins, and I'm just going to pin this in place just in a couple of spots so that it doesn't move around on me when I go to add it. And keep in mind, if you have a directional print, you'll want your directional print going up towards your top raw edge. Now we're going to unfold it and make sure it's not attached at all with those pins to the rest of my lining down here, and it's not. I'm going to go ahead and sew now. I'm going to back stitch here and here, and I'm going to sew all the way around, making sure I'm closing up my opening. My opening is down here, and then oops, back up to the top. And if you want, you could even do a line down the center so you have 2 pockets, or you can just leave this as 1. I'm just going to clip these off. So now all we need to do is take our lining and fold it in half. Next, we're going to take our lining piece and we are going to sew up both of these side edges using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then on one of the sides, we're going to leave an opening about 5 or so inches so that we can turn our bag right side out when we're done. And I usually leave that opening about 3 inches down from my top edge. So I'm actually going to grab my outside panel as well. And again, I'm going to fold that in half. And this Sherpa is really stretchy both ways, so just try not to worry about it too much. I just try and fold it in half like this as best as I can. And then I do, on this one, like to put some clips down the side. And that just helps keep it together when I'm sewing because it can get shoved down in with your feed dogs. All right, so here's our outside panel, here's our lining panel. We're going to take both of these over to our machine and sew down this side edge. I am going to back stitch at my start. All right, so here is our Sherpa panel. I've sewn both sides together, and then here is our lining. So next we're going to box the bottoms of these corners. You've seen me do it lots of times, and there's a couple different ways to do it. You can either take your ruler and trace out a square right here, cut that square out, fold it in half. I actually prefer to do it this way because I feel like there's just less room for error. So I stick my hand in there and then lay it flat like this, and I line up this seam with this crease that I had on the bottom from when I had my bag folded in half. And I'll just lay that just like that, and then I'll do the same thing on this side. And just with this, all you have to do is just make sure you're getting all of your layers. And it should actually sort of fall in place. So when you're done, you should have a nice shape like this. And you can see that crease is lined up right with that. And then now you can just decide how big of a boxed bottom you want. So I've got the diagonal line on my ruler right along this diagonal edge. This line is right along your seam line, so you know everything is nice and straight. And then you can just decide this is 4.5 inches. If we just want 4, whatever you want, you can do. And then if you're not sure what you would like, you can just mark it like this. Look, this is 4.5 inches. And then I'll actually just put a couple pins across there going along that line, just like that. And then I can do a sample and I can just unfold this and see. And so you can see what that's going to look like. You can do it to both sides, but you can see what that's going to look like on the bottom of your bag and how wide of a base you'll have when you do that. So I actually like that 4.5 inches. I think I'm going to stick with that. So again, I'm going to fold my bag in half, opposite direction, so these side seams are lining up. And when you do that, this base should sort of just fall into place like it should for your box bottoms. I'm just going to get that one out of the way. And again, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to do 4.5 inches right here. I'm lining up my diagonal like that. And then this line is lined up with my crease. So I know I'm pretty straight, just like that. And then I will go ahead and throw some pins in here just to hold it in place. And then whatever I do on this lining piece, I'm going to do the exact same thing on my Sherpa outside panel. And I'm just going to move these pins so they are going this way so I don't accidentally sew over one. So it's looking like this. We've got our line there and our line there. I'm actually going to take this to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew right along this line. I'm going to backstitch at my stops and starts right here, and then I'll come back and cut it off about 1/2 inch away from our stitch line just to get rid of some of this bulk. And then we're going to repeat that same thing for our outside panel. All right, and here's what our bag is looking like. That looks pretty good to me. So now we can just cut these off, and then like I said, I'm going to repeat that same thing with our other panel. All right, so here is our lining panel. We've got our box bottoms, and then we have that opening on our side edge. We've got our outside panel, again with the boxed bottoms, and then we've just sewn up both sides, no opening on those. And you're going to want to make sure your outside panel is right side out, and you're going to want to make sure that your lining panel is wrong side out. All right, so now we're going to open up our lining, and we're going to just put our outside panel inside of our lining, and it doesn't have to be in there perfectly. It should fit relatively well. I just shake it in there. And the first thing we're going to do is line up these side panels. So where our side seams are, I like to just put a clip there, and then I'm going to grab this other side seam. And you're going to do this whether you've used the Sherpa or regular fabric, it doesn't matter. I always line up my sides first, and then I just straighten it out so that it's nice and smooth. And then I'm just going to grab somewhere in the middle here and put a clip and put a clip. And then now I can add some extra clips around, and that'll just help ease that fabric in place because the lining isn't really all that stretchy, but this Sherpa is quite stretchy. So now we can take this to our sewing machine. We're going to sew all the way around the edge using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure that you are getting all of your layers in there, especially if you're using this Sherpa, because it can just be kind of slippery. So just a quick note, I'm going to be using these handles. These are an afterthought. You add these after your bag is all done, so that's why I'm not adding them yet. If you don't want to use those and you just want to use regular handles or even fabric handles, you can do that. You would put them in between your lining and your outside panel at this step. We'll just use this as a sample. And then your handle will actually go down inside the bag, and those raw edges would be lined up right here and here. And then you would pin those in place and then sew your handles in place as you're sewing around the outside edge of your bag. That is not how these handles are attached, so I'm obviously not going to do that right now. But if you wanted to add fabric straps or even like cotton webbing straps, this is the stage where you would do that. So we're going to take this to our machine and sew around this top edge using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I actually like to start and stop on my side panels, especially if stuff gets wonky. It's sort of less noticeable there. All right, and here is our bag. And so now we just need to turn it outside, right side out. And I do like to just go around this top edge really quick and just make sure that I have gotten all of my layers. This Sherpa is really just slippery and squishy. I mean, it's not horrible, but it is just something you want to double check before you finish off your bag. And so now we can just pull out our insides. All right, you should have something that is looking like this. Now all we have to do is close up this seam. So I do like to just repress this or even finger press it. And I will take this to my sewing machine. You can hand stitch this if you want, but I just use my sewing machine, and I'm just going to stitch up this opening with my machine. And I just use like a 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so our opening is sewn closed, and I do just like to tug on it to make sure I got it all and I don't have like a little hole in there. Everything's good. And then now we can just press this down inside of our bag Okay, and it's so cute. So now we've got our lining in, and then the last step that I like to do, and this is semi-optional, you don't have to on this bag because we're gonna be adding these handles, and the handles actually go through both layers, so they keep the layers organized, but you can take this to your machine and just run a top stitch around this edge just to keep everything in place, and I'll usually press it really quickly as well. Just give it a quick finger press just so that my lining is nice and straight. But there we have our little Sherpa bag. We've got a pocket in there. And then the last step is just to add these coconuts handles. There is instructions on their website and in the kit on how to add your handles to any bag project. I'll probably add my handles in about 5 or so inches in from both sides. And they're gonna go right on the outsides of the bag just like this. You can use a stiletto or any sharp thing you have. Honestly, I like using these scissors. And I know it seems kind of harsh, but make sure you know where you want them. And I'll just poke that through just like that. And so I will take a tie and I'll go ahead, poke that through like that. Add one of my backings, like this. Poke my second hole. There we go. So that's what the inside looks like. And then I've got both of these panels out here, and I can grab my handle, and then you're just going to poke that through those holes just like this. Just make sure it's relatively even, and then just tie it in a knot. And I love these handles. They're so cute, and they're removable. Obviously, you can see you just have to untie that knot, and then you can wash your bag or whatever you need to do to it. So these are great. I use these all the time on my knit and crochet bags. And that's it. Our cute Sherpa bag is all done. Like I said, you don't have to use the Sherpa. You can use any fabric for the outside that you want, but it is just a super simple little tote bag. It's really fast to put together. If I weren't filming, I could probably put this whole thing together in like about an hour, maybe even less. So it's really fast and easy. And these bags are a great size for travel bags. They're a great size for knit and crochet projects. You can bring English paper piecing projects in these if you're going to like a retreat or to meet up with some friends to do some fun crafting. So that's what I'm going to use mine for, but they're really good purse size bags. So I hope you guys have a lot of fun with this tutorial. If you did, make sure to tag me on social media so I can see what you make. And as always, if you like this video, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming fun. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, and I will see you in the next one. And I just do that like that. And now I'm going to take this to my machine, making sure it's not attached like it is right. Is it this one? Yep.